Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Restored to More. We are so excited for you guys to get to know our guest today, Dr. Cory Allan.
Dr. Cory Allan is a licensed marriage and family therapist and a professional life and relationship coach. He's an author, blogger, speaker, husband, and father. His podcast, Sexy Marriage Radio, features straightforward, honest conversations about what goes on behind closed doors in your marriage. Cory, thanks for being with us today.
This will be a fun conversation. I'm excited to join you guys.
Well, before we dive in and start talking about some questions and topics that we came up with, can you just share a little bit of your story so that our audience can get to know who you are, maybe like where this passion came from and why you like to talk about healthy marriage and sexy marriage?
Okay. Well, how much time do we have?
Yeah.
No, that's a joke. I went into the ministry coming out of undergrad. Was in ministry for 6.5 years, left that to save my life and my marriage because of my own stupidity and mistakes. With an emotional betrayal. That launched me on a journey of just kind of restoring my life, rebuilding, being better. Also my wife's, she offered the ring back during the midst of this hole. And I told her, no, not yet. Let's give this a better run. Let me get my act together better in a sense. Then I always knew I would be heading into the therapy field anyway. It's kind of part of my family of origin, with a father that taught psychology, a sister that's a social worker. And then the running joke is my mom's crazy, but not really. But it's just that idea of, I knew that was going to be heading into that at some point. And so went back to school, started the practice I have in 2002, working with people individually, started blogging in 2008 because I wanted to reach people before there were problems. Because I literally had one night where I had 4 couples in a row and 3 of them ended their relationships in my office that night.
Wow.
And I don't think it was me that did that. I think it was just, I'm a big, huge proponent of people being honest.
Wow.
And because I even think somebody that says I'm done, if that's true honesty, that doesn't necessarily mean they're done. That they could all of a sudden, they just got that out in the open and then they rethink. And then because we don't make big decisions like this quickly, at least not without major ramifications. So I started blogging. And then 3 years after that, I've noticed every time I wrote on the topic of sex, those were the most well received and commented articles that I wrote. So I found a colleague because I said somebody needs to talk about married sex in a good value-based way. Because at the time, iTunes was littered. Well, what are you talking about at the time? It still is at the time. It's littered with a lot of anything goes, not real value-based, not Christian-based for sure.
Yeah.
In general. And so we started Sexy Marriage Radio in October 2011, I guess it was, and 2 co-hosts. Over the next 6 years. And then my wife has been my co-host the last 3.5. And we're coming up on 10 years as a show. And what started as a hobby is now a business, and it's a blast. And some of our most fun things we do are on the mic, as you guys hopefully will get to feel and experience as you go along, because you get to create a relationship with people that they don't even know who you are, but they know you. And that's a fantastic medium that still doing that, and then see clients virtually and see doing this the rest of my life.
Your heart just is so evident in what you're doing, Cory. Like, I don't know, I know we barely know each other, but I can see like, wow, you're doing this because your motivation is to help people. I love what you shared off air. We were just talking about, hey, what are some of the tips? I mean, gosh, you've been doing this for 10 years. We could learn so much from you. And your advice, of course, is, hey, just always be concerned about your audience. Always take them into your space and go, this isn't about a show and a production. This is about helping that one person that needs to hear something. And I see that. Obviously, it was a good word for us for sure as fellow podcasters, but it's who you are as a person, and it's really cool to see that for sure.
Well, I'll acknowledge the underbelly of this too, because some of this is self-serving in the sense of doing Sexy Marriage Radio has helped improve my marriage and sex life too. So I'll be honest about that. Man. Just seeing the transformation of my wife over the last 3.5 years of talking about this. And I mean, because I don't know, you guys maybe don't know the history of this, but for about 6 to 8 months in the first 2 years of Sexy Marriage Radio, she couldn't even listen
Wow.
anymore because she heard a statement I made in a show about I'm always looking to close. And that was just a statement I just made because there was truth to it. But she then read anytime I was just being nice or taking the trash out of, oh, he's just looking for sex in there. And it's like, well, yes, but there's more to it than that. And that's the kind of stuff I want us to talk about a lot with Sexy Marriage Radio for sure, is there's a lot more going on than the simplistic ways we think of it. And so as we've gone on, some of this is us just living life on the air too, because it's us trying to be better too.
Well, why don't we start there? I know we have some, before we dive in a little bit, a lot of what we do with Crisis to Closeness, with Restored to More, is talking about how as a married couple, we are going to face different kinds of crisis. Some are going to be as huge as betrayal. Some are going to be an emotional betrayal, a sexual betrayal, like we went through. For you guys, do you mind elaborating on that a little more, and how that actually brought you guys closer today versus ending in divorce?
Well, I think a lot of it became a commitment to ourselves first and then each other, because I realized, and I don't know, Clinton, I don't know what your whole story has been, but there's an element of this that when you hit a point where everything comes out. In my case, it was a disclosure. She was reading it and like, what's going on? You know, she didn't know exactly, but she knew something. And I was like, here you go. You know, and I just, here it all comes, right? And after the dark of that and the dark night of the soul of that, there was just this tremendous realization of, I am not the man I want to be. This is not who I want to be. Right. I'm made for more than this. I mean, you can put platitudes in there, but there was a guttural, no, I got to get my life back in order. Forget my marriage at this point. This is about saving my life. And so that's what kind of turned it, because then I started just doing some real heavy lifting for myself on restoring life with God, restoring life as just a human being, restoring life as a man and a husband to a wife and a son to my parents, you know, just getting life back to who I needed to be and become, which then put pressure on her to, okay, wait, if he's getting his act together, what am I doing? You know, because I believe relationship dynamics are co-created. The crap that happens within them are chosen by each individual. But in our case, I had a mistress of a youth group and my wife had a mistress of a work. And we had just kind of evolved to where we were just coexisting.
Wow.
And so that makes it really ripe for stupid things to happen. And so by just dealing with that and then starting to deal with each other better, because I have a fundamental belief that's the professional belief I have is that marriage is designed to help us grow up, period. That's the whole reason it exists. It's not for happiness.
Wow.
Happiness is a horrible place to go to. In marriage is a horrible place to find happiness.
Okay, we got to talk about that like right now, right? You can't just throw that out there, Cory, and be like, all right, we're just gonna move on. Like, whoa, wait a minute.
Well,
we're in the Christian world where a lot of our audience is Christians, and even have singles listen to our podcast who are told, if I get married, I'm gonna be happy. I'm gonna have.
It'll solve all of my ills in life.
100%. And so, okay, wait a minute. Let's go back. Rewind. Let's go back to what you just said there. How in the world did you get there? And what does that mean? That marriage wasn't created for happiness, but it's created for us to grow up. You got to expand on that.
So biblically speaking, I believe God cares more about our character and our wisdom development than he does our happiness and a good time here on earth. I mean, if you take any kind of scripture you want that talks about what's the purpose of a person, that's what he's talking about in large aspects. So I think of it as, yes, I want the other things that come with it, the joy, the affection, the love, the sex, the camaraderie, the friendship. I want that. That's part of our nature and who we are. But if I'm expecting that from my spouse, I'm expecting disappointment. And I think when you get further into marriage, and what I like about you guys' angle of the idea of there's something else going on in crisis that's going to create intimacy, you can then dovetail in this idea that intimacy is just as likely to be uncomfortable as it is comfortable.
Yeah.
And so the times where you really do at your wits end and you hate each other and you're just, you're just gripping on, I don't even know if I can handle it. That's actually truly intimate moments. We don't think of it that way though.
No, we don't.
Because we want to romanticize and Disneyland that stuff all the time, when that's not really what it is, because intimacy is being known and knowing. And so there's two sides to this coin. And so the more you get into relationships with each other and the same person, even with marriage, the more you're going to find about them that's either going to scare you, disappoint you, frustrate you because they don't want what you want. And that's normal. That's married life.
So wait, Cory, so we shouldn't just get divorced when I find things out about Charity that I don't like or that's scary?
This was a funny conversation just the other day with my sister-in-law and my daughter were in the room. And we were talking with my sister-in-law about our struggles with Instagram and social media and how we're kind of pulling back right now and likely going to just go away completely, but pulling back for right now because it's too prepackaged, fix it quick kind of a mentality. And my daughter is huge in Instagram. She's actually helped get me up to speed on learning Instagram. I was like, she's my expert, right?
Yeah, right on.
And so as I'm talking to my sister-in-law about it, who divorced after a 30-year marriage, and she's 2.5 years, 3 years out of that. And we were just talking, I just made a comment of, my message, my audience for Sexy Marriage Radio are the people that have woken up and looked at their spouse and go, I wonder if I made a mistake, or I don't think I really like you anymore. I don't. And that's when married life begins to me. That's when it really becomes the commitment mechanism of, okay, what's going on here? Because this isn't just about a good time now. That most of what we want is what we get at the very beginning when we're idealistically distorted on each other, and we're euphorically high on each other. You can do no wrong, and you've met each other's marketing departments, and you like those parts, but you don't like the back office parts. But once you meet the back office, that's when you decide what's really going on here, and that's where it gets
a
good.
Analogy of marketing, because every product has that, right? And that's like, man, all you see is the commercial and the flashy lights and the exciting actors, and you're like, wow, this is legit. And then you go back behind the scenes, you're like, wait, what's going on back here? What's in this back office part?
Charity has got a janitorial department in the back that you're probably not going to really like at times.
Man, that is really
and same for you with her. I mean, that's the reality of it. That wait, you mean you don't like Chinese food? I thought you.
That's a real thing, Cory. I love Chinese
food. I know
it
is.
Hates it. That is a legit concern. We need to book a session and talk about that after this call. But I love what you're saying. I mean, my gosh, that is so countercultural.
Yeah.
Yep. I think, Cory, when rubber hits the road and we find disconnects, that means maybe I did get with the wrong person. Yeah. Not, wow, now there's a chance for marriage to get started. I mean,
what's so interesting in that, man, is what is it that keeps us from asking the question, maybe I'm the wrong person in those scenarios. Maybe what I want isn't actually what I need or is good for me, or that it's just, I could ask so many better questions if I'll take the courage to ask, and it truly is courage, because my clients are some of the most courageous people on the face of the planet because they're willing to ask the really tough questions of themselves.
Wow. And what I hear you saying is that's when it goes to covenant. That's when it goes to commitment more than happiness. Can you talk a little bit about that? How much does a covenant play a part in us choosing to analyze our own selves versus point the finger and all those things?
Well, that's the same kind of thing that I was alluding to, that I've kind of just went through on my own. Now I look back on it, it wasn't a conscious choice of me kind of, I got to save my own life in a sense. It was kind of looking back on it like, that's what I did actually. And it's that idea of, I've made this commitment to marriage, not just to my wife, Pam, to myself too.
Wow.
Right. So it's going on both sides. That I'm committing to show up every single day. I mean, we're getting ready, man, we're 28.5 years into this thing, she and I, with marriage, and every day is a choice.
Wow.
Just like it was in day 2 and 3 and 4. Right. And so it's just, do I show up every day? Do I bring me every day? And when I do that, I put better pressure, because that's the thing most people think we can avoid the pressure that comes in marriage, and you just really can't. How do I just make it cleaner? How do I just be more honest? And that's what crisis reveals in us.
So good. Yeah, I think just coming from like our personal experience is when Clinton reveals something in the back office that I don't like and it's not pretty, I think it also reveals something that I don't like about myself in my back office. And so I get uncomfortable with that, and I don't want to go there because it's too painful or fearful, and it reveals something about me that I don't like. And I think it goes along with what you're saying is, it's asking the question. I think sometimes we're so quick to point and to blame rather than to analyze, like, well, why, what is this saying about me? And how can we come together rather than blame and then go apart?
Right. That's the phrase that, our marriage, our spouse is a really finely tuned mirror of ourselves. And when I get these things like you're describing, Charity, that are something revealing of me, I blame him for even bringing a mirror to the equation. How dare you? Rather than, no, that's you. And I love the idea. I say this kiddingly, I guess. I love and I hate the idea that my wife requires more of me. And she's there, her responsibility, if you will, quote unquote, is to help me grow up by just being around. And when she takes a break, my kids step in and challenging me to grow up because they are mirrors of me too. They are exactly like me in some ways. And some of that I'm proud of. And some of that I'm like, no, you got that from your mom. Right.
Totally.
because I don't like that. I didn't like that part of me.
Yeah.
Man, I thought, but it's just it's inescapable that they'll get the good, they'll get the bad. And the best thing I can do is show up and be responsible for me better.
So unfortunately, we live in a culture that tells us it's all about our comfort and all about our pleasure. And maybe we are open to motivational speakers and motivational YouTube videos in the area of performance for our jobs or for our incomes. But I don't think there is a talk that we're giving married couples on. You're going to be uncomfortable most of the time, and that's okay. And you're about character development. And so I'm just like, wow, like as a culture, this conversation seems like it's easy to kind of grab it and crumble it up and let's just toss it out the window. And who cares if we litter here? Because this is not a conversation that makes any of us feel good. I'm like, man, Cory, I don't know if I like this conversation right now. Talk about that for a little bit. How do we overcome that as like, ooh, ouch, you're kind of hurting me here?
Well, I use it more in the sense, this is what I do in the therapy practice and the coaching practice I have. If I use it to I feel like my job is to help people get a better picture of what's going on so they can make better choices accordingly. Because most often we've skewed it, we've reframed it to our advantage, we've placed blame, we've done whatever. And some of that's just a legitimate, this is what I've done all my life and my family did it. And on it goes, versus no, here's what you're really facing. Now, what do you want to do about it? And I think in some regards, when people take the moment to hear it, the best in them rises up and they're like, you're right. That's some of my favorite emails I've gotten over the course of SMR is, I found you because I was trying to figure out a way how to get laid more often, or to get my wife on board for sex, or even my husband on board for sex more. And I'll be frank, Cory, after like 3 weeks, I hated you because you weren't going that way at all until I finally started realizing this is me. I'm getting in my own way. Wow. I got to figure out how to do this different. And then all of a sudden it clicks and something changes because we all of a sudden have responsibility for ourselves differently, which we've had that all along.
Wow.
And, I love I have a lot of truisms and phrases in my life. And one of them I love is, you may not be to blame for what happens in your life, but you are responsible. And that's life right there. Because I would love to know what would have happened to the nation, to the creation story after Eve was tricked, handed the fruit to Adam. He took it, and then God comes walking later in the day. I love that phrase. And he's like hiding. Where are you? Like he doesn't know. And Adam like, well, what happened? And if Adam goes, you know what, God, that's on me. That was on me. I screwed that one, dude. That's on me. Sorry.
Wow.
It's not, don't blame her. I'll take it all, just kind of owned it, took responsibility for it. What would have happened? Someone else would have come along and
Right.
and lied and obfuscated and done all that stuff too. But
Mhm.
it's in our nature. So how do we go against that? How do we avoid that blame game and just see it as life is so much better when you're responsible for stuff?
Wow.
I'm so guilty of this. I'm sitting here like, man, I'm so guilty of going to Charity and I going to counseling and me sitting there and blaming her on stuff. Or even, I mean, it's crazy. I'm just being totally honest. Even in the midst of recovery, here I am. I'm the one that betrayed Charity sexually. I'm in these 12-step groups. I'm seeing a therapist. I'm seeing all these people. I'm going to my sponsor. And how many of those conversations was like, yeah, man, I'm doing a really good job in my recovery, but I got to tell you, like, Charity is the one holding us back. And I'm sad saying that. Dang it. I'm sorry, Charity, yet again. But I want to ask you a question, Cory. What happens in a relationship when we assume responsibility? Like, what happens? What are the outcomes that we can be like, hey, this is why you want to do this?
So the easiest description is all of a sudden now you start to face clean pain.
Explain that. What does that mean?
Because what you just described, Clinton, was this idea of the more I avoid the dirt that I've created in my own life and blame it on other people, I just create things that fester. But owning your side of an equation, it still has pain. It's, I mean, if you're going to deal with our fallenness and you're going to deal with brokenness and you're going to deal with our stupidity as human beings, there's pain. I say, I mean, on a lighter way, when you finally get up the courage again to say, hey, Charity, let's go get Chinese food. And she's like, yeah, no, there's pain in that. It's kind of a lighter on the scale, but because you've got this idealized, but we could just, have our interlocking chopsticks and meet together with the noodles and
and reenact like the what's that? Lady in the Tramp.
Lady in the Tramp. That's where I was going.
Come on, yeah.
But I dated myself there, and you guys, I'm glad you guys could keep up with that. Of course, you got little ones, so you got it. But it's just the idea of, we get these romanticized views that if I can own my side of it, there's still sometimes pain. When I tell my wife I'm not interested in whatever, there can be pain in that. But it's clean if it's me truly showing up and consistently being engaged, presenting something worth wanting and a value to choose. Because the biggest issue I hear, to kind of build off of your statement of Charity's holding us back mentality, is, if you're talking about that in a sexual arena, what is it that keeps you from asking yourself the question of, is what I'm offering even worth having sex with? Or is it one-sided? Is it just about my needs? Or am I really a giving, engaged for more than just the orgasm component, and more, because there's so much more going on than just a penis and a vagina. There's the people those things are attached to. That's what creates the best sex.
We get that all the time. Go ahead, Chair.
Let's stay on the sex topic, because I heard you talk about this and I wanted to talk about this more in depth. I've heard you say that when sex gets uncomfortable, then like you get uncomfortable and you have an opportunity right then and there to continue to have sex, even though you see that your partner is disengaged and not there physically anymore. And you have the opportunity to continue to have sex with them until climax, and then just like pretend maybe that nothing happened. Or you have the opportunity to stop sex and like just confront it. Can we just like talk about that? And
and that's just as a qualifier, because I'll hear this as I gotta cover gaps for just because people hear what they hear. When you're talking about uncomfortable, I'm not talking about physical discomfort.
Thank you.
Okay. Because if there is physical discomfort on male or female side, because this happens on both sides, not talked about very often, but there are men that experience pain with erections at times. And some of them are like, but dude, no, that's creating additional little traumas in you that will cause problems in the long run. And for sure with women, grinning and bear it, no, speak up, come up with something else. There's better lubes out there. There's practices, techniques, pelvic floor exercise, a lot of different things you can do. But when you're talking about a emotional discomfort.
Yes.
That's good.
Or a mental discomfort,
Yes.
even a spiritual discomfort can come along with this whole
Yeah,
thing.
sure.
Yes.
There is this element of, we have a map of each other in the midst of sex, of how to get the job done reliably most regular times, right? We know these maps. And so it's just a question of, do you each show up or not? And if you recognize your partner's just going through the motions, or is offering up less than, or whatever, it is a tremendously courageous moment to be able to stop and say, where are you? What's going on? You know, and that's incredibly hard to do when you're inside a woman, you know, or she's on top of him and you're like, where'd you go? And like, I'm right here. No, you're not right here. You're going to ruin the sexual encounter right then for that moment. But if you both take growth steps and are responsible and say, you know what? I checked out. I'm sorry. Let's back up a little bit. Now, all of a sudden you got a whole nother option, or I'm just not there. You're welcome to do something. If you want to finish, you're welcome. That's at least you're honoring what's there. Because too often when the man's the higher desire, he just settles for really bad sex without even recognizing he's part of the problem.
Yeah.
It's not just the fact she's not interested in sex. She's not interested in sex that's bad.
Wow.
So there's a difference. That's just masturbating without your hands in that regard.
Yes.
Wow.
So it's like, okay, but if she's going to really step up to that, she has to really embrace and experience, what's this really about for me? Maybe she's never asked herself those questions, because a lot of Christian women have never really explored their sexuality to what it really can be, out of fear, uncertainty, bad messages, whatever. Don't recognize the power. I call it the feminine superpower that they have of, man, there is so much she can experience that's beyond just bodily. And she's got to embrace that and ask the tough questions, versus the guys too often, they just think of it as a means to an end rather than, what are they really bringing? Who are they?
Wow.
In this process.
Wow. Yeah, it's making us take that second glance instead of like pointing the finger. Again, it goes back to, hey, what am I bringing to the table here? Am I bringing something that is intimate and that is special? And I can really appreciate that. I don't know if I have a question to follow up with that, but I'm
but this is also more than what you do or don't do. This is who you each are. Right. And I think that's the growth process right there. That I term it as the best sex that happens in marriage, or great sex in marriage, are couples that recover well. Because you're going to try something and it fails, but does it ruin it, or do you recover? You're going to try something and it started well, and then one of you lost your mojo, or you pulled a hamstring, or, you know, your hip hurts, or you're no longer lubricated, or your erection gets a little softer than you thought. I mean, because all that crap happens. In normal human beings, it happens. So can you recover and go, wait, hold on? I mean, one of the scariest things my wife has ever said to me in this arena was, after our normal interlude of sex was done, which was me and I was done, she said, "You're not done." And it's like, excuse me? Oh, okay. And there was a swallow, like, okay, let's go then. We'll figure something out, you know, because that just pushed me beyond what I thought I could or couldn't do. And because it was just different. I'd never done that before. And like, well, okay. Now it's something different.
Wow. Yeah, we talk a lot about that, man. It's so funny to go, man. We always make jokes, and they're intimate moments, which I wouldn't share on the podcast per se, but then intimate moment, and we're like, man, they never talk about this in the movies, and that's like our phrase, like they never talk about this part in the movies, and it's something hilarious. It's like it just kind of normalizes it, and then we just laugh about it, and I think that builds an intimacy. That's what I hear you saying, like that actually builds an intimacy right there, versus like, oh man, like, should we keep going? Should we stop? Should we just give up today? Should we just like avoid that? And I think like that's what I hear you saying, like, wow, there's actually an opportunity there versus an obligation to run away or just compare it to what we see out there. I appreciate you brought up social media on the quick fix stuff. Let's also compare sex as normal human beings compared to what we see all day long in media, in music videos, in TV, in social media posts. I mean, all these things make it sound like it's completely effortless to have good sex. And if it's not, something's wrong with you.
Yeah. And I mean, I've never seen a movie depict morning breath.
You're right.
I mean, come on. Like you're rolling over, like, I'm sorry. Oh no, I just lost it. I'm out, That's real life.
Yeah.
That's why you have Altoids and stuff right there beside the bed. That way,
Smart move.
Position that works, but it's still just, that's not stuff that's talked about that most everybody is. And plus, nobody talks about the politics of the wet spot. I mean, you can frame it that way, and you're talking about a whole different aspect of marriage. But yeah, it's just, there's so much more going on. And part of our mission with SMR, and it sounds like you guys' mission with Restored to More absolutely is, let's talk about what's normal. Let's talk about what happens to everybody. And it's not catastrophic. It's not a big deal. I mean, most of the time I can hear a couple clients' story, and after hearing it all, I can look at them and go, what else you got? Because this is largely fairly normal.
Yeah.
Welcome to marriage. I hate to burst the bubble, but it's true. It's going to happen. So what else you got? And then we keep talking and normalize it and frame it something that makes it a little more palatable, or then they start recognize their own role in it, and that changes their path and trajectory.
Now, how do we get this also? Like, how do we hear that it's about us becoming the best person in our character, but also not make it about performance sex, where we bring this performance attitude into the bedroom, where if I got to perform well, and that normally I feel like most guys I talk to, performance is not only for us to orgasm, but it's to get her to orgasm. And so we're like hypersensitive to everything they're doing to make sure that they're enjoying every minute of it. And it can kind of be exhausting. It can feel kind of transactional almost versus intimate. I don't know if you get that question a lot, but I feel
that's the way a lot of couples have sex.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there's scripts that go on, and it's spectatoring on one or both sides of, I'm just focusing on, am I playing the right role? Am I doing the right thing? Was she liking this? Is she not liking that? Or you get to the thing Charity described of, you just disconnect because I can't be too close because you're taking away my mojo when I read your face is not into this. We want to feed off each other in good ways, not bad. But they happen all the time in both ways in most sexual encounters. So I guess it just comes down to, how do you start to look at this as, what's this exposing about me? What do I have attached to the idea of, can I reach an orgasm in a certain way? Can I make her reach an orgasm in a certain way? I actually just got an email the other day about, my husband's all disappointed because we don't have simultaneous orgasms. And he said he had that with a prior girl and it was fantastic. And I'm like, okay, why? What is the coup de grace about that? Versus, did you really connect? Because you can have fantastic sexual encounters that neither one of you orgasm. And they're still great encounters with each other because you learned something. It was enjoyable. Is, whatever it could be, there's a lot of different meanings we can attach to it. And so sex is a fascinating way to learn the whole role simultaneously of giving and receiving. And most human beings have real trouble receiving. They won't admit that to themselves, but we do. And so it's that idea of, how do I just take back and enjoy what's being offered to me at the same time as giving what I want to offer? And that's some of the best intimate sex you can have, because it truly is kind of a dance. It's an art. But most couples, we dumb it down to what gets the job done. Sure. I touch you like this, you touch me like that, done. Now we can move on to go watch the next binge episode of whatever. Or eat, or go to sleep. Rather than, well, what if this was something a little more creative, a little more spontaneous? And what we don't realize is, when I do that, it's going to create anxieties in us, and that usually stops us.
Wow. You have something to share? I was gonna ask you, Cory, as it pertains to Christian marriages, what are you seeing the most being the dilemma? Is it even starting this conversation? Is it the fact that the church isn't talking about it and they feel isolated in their pain? Is it that they don't know what's holy and what's not holy? What do you feel like is the issue with Christian marriages, and why they have to let it get so bad before they're coming to you in such a large crisis?
I think there's a lot of things. One of them is the church has handled this so poorly. by not handling it, not addressing it, not talking about it, or the typical what I was raised in, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Oh, you said I do. Have a blast. And it's like, you can't overcome that amount of anxiety.
Wow.
I mean, it's all right. Sex, anytime there's nakedness going on, there's already levels of anxiety. So it's just recognizing, okay, wait, it's just that kind of anxiety. We think of it as excitement, but it's still anxiety. So the church, we just haven't done real well in talking about it. It hasn't been talked about well in families, to be able to be upfront, have parents have conversations with their kids about appropriate body part names, appropriate touch, appropriate relationships, what this actually is, what the whole concept of it all is. And then the other thing is, I think we all come in where we have put an expectation of it will solve all my ills. Right? That if I had a porn problem before, which was mine, when I could actually have sex, it'd go away. Yeah, right. It's a whole, porn never says no. My wife would. And now what do I do? Well, that's a me problem, not a her problem.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just kind of looking at it as all of this stuff is exposing me. And we don't often think of it that way. And so what I have found with SMR, and what hopefully you guys find, is once you can kind of get a fingernail in that door with them, there's they just kind of relax and like, okay, you mean it's not wrong that this didn't go well and we only having sex this amount of times and we can only orgasm this way? And no, there's nothing wrong. Wow. Now it's just a question of, can you build something from that? Can you look at it a little different and create what you want it to be, maybe?
Wow. I love that. That makes me excited for things like SMR, because I feel like that's our heartbeat too. Like if more people would just start their own journey, then we could do the preventative work, because the preventative work is our kids, right? It's our kids that are being raised in this culture. And we can't expect everybody else to disciple our kids in this area if we aren't on a journey of being discipled in this area.
Right.
That's what I hear you saying.
Right. And we have to model a vibrant marriage. We have to model and this, I get in trouble for this, but we have to model a sexual marriage. And I don't mean they know what's going on and it's flippantly flaunted, but there's locks on master bedroom doors in most homes in America for a reason. Use them.
Yeah.
And tell kids, no, this is mommy and daddy time. This is adult time. And go on dates and tell them that, like, no, this is us. We are getting away from you for a little while. That is okay, because this is adults only time. And, just having that kind of willingness to show I'm into my spouse does so much for the stability of a kid in the long run, and the health of a kid in the long run, because then they have something to aspire for. I mean, I hope my daughter has the DAX deck so much against her, in a sense of the bar I'm trying to set and how I live my life. That if she wants to find somebody like me, I hope that's really, really high. The advantage I've got is I'm 50. Whoever she's meeting is 17. So he doesn't know what he's doing and who he is in life yet, but neither does she. But it's still that element of, okay, hold on. There's something bigger going on here. And how am I living and modeling that, as well as talking about it?
Yeah. So good. Wow.
I love that.
We took so many notes. Just
I ran out of paper like chair, and I was like literally like, man, I need more paper to write on here. And I just love that. I think unfortunately there are too many young people that don't see that example, and they're giving up on marriage.
Yeah.
And
well, there's that, but there's also something, I thought of this earlier, I need to put it in just because I think it's worth it. Because one of the things that comes up is how do you talk about the aspect of sex in a Christian realm? And there's just not enough honest conversation about it. Because yes, is it blessed and sacred and a profound thing? Absolutely. Is it also dangerous and scary? Absolutely. That's that way in marriage too. There's a lot of pain that comes from this in married life, right? There's a lot of real ugly things that happen in marriage too. But it's just, how do we talk about, one, the mechanics of it better, and the aspects of it and the sacredness of it better, but also touch on the profoundness. I mean, I think the best sex education there needs to be, and I'll say this to my kids, you know what, your mom and I have been banging away at each other for 28 years and we still haven't figured it out. Right? Because we haven't. As soon as you think something, you got it. Oh, hey, we can make this happen. I know this. This will send her through the roof. And then 3 times later, it's like, it did nothing.
Yeah.
Like, what happened? You know, I don't know. She doesn't know. It's just like, well, dang it, you know. Well, okay. And then all of a sudden there's something, I didn't even know we could do that, you know, and it's just, there's so much more than just the biological happening. That's how do we kind of drip feed that, in a sense of just talking about, this is something to honor, but also realize we don't ever necessarily master. It's just something a whole lot of fun to try.
I think that really creates, though, like an open conversation for understanding, and it kind of removes the performance, because then I think if we always are like, I think, and this is kind of part of what we were raised in, a culture of adults saying, oh man, sex is always awesome. And we're like, wow, well, our sex is awesome, so what's going on? You know what I mean? Right? And if you're saying that to your kids, like, you know, honestly, there's things we do that we had to toss that one out. That didn't work out. That's like, oh, there's room for error. There's room for mistakes. There's room for not enjoyable moments in sex. And I can appreciate that big time.
And you also have a tremendous amount of teachable moments with kids. You know, we're watching Ted Lasso with our kids right now because they're teenagers. And so we're working our way through it. And there's all kinds of stuff that's not anywhere close to our values.
Sure.
Right. In that show. But we take a moment of after it and like, okay, hold on. What was being portrayed there? What do you think? Where's that? Where are we at that? What do we think? You know, because our values are not something I can teach my kids. They catch it. Am I living it? And am I talking about it? I can't pound it in them. Right. And so it's just, there's all kinds of this dialogue you can have all the way through. Doesn't matter the age of the kid. You can always have a dialogue about, wait, there's something more. There's something a little deeper we could experience. And the more you can kind of keep doing that, I think the more consistent we can be and the better everybody can be.
Wow.
I just want to say one thing that made me think when you guys are talking is, you know, if we normalize the conversation about married sex, specifically with our children, I just think, wow, the realistic expectations that they're going to have going into marriage is going to be way healthier than saying, oh yeah, marriage is great, rather than like, and it's amazing, and it is amazing, and it is good, but there is also like learning, and it's not roses all the time, and you know, fantasy, because then when they are exposed to pornography, because I believe it's just a matter of, it's not if, it's when they are exposed, they're going to be like, wait a second, why is pornography always like performance, and there's always, you know,
it's good.
this perfection. There's never error for wrong. There's never error for like mistake. And so then they're going to be like, okay, either mommy and daddy are lying or pornography's lying.
Right.
Good.
But if we don't have those conversations, then they are going to have unrealistic, unhealthy expectations when they get married.
One of the best things that just happened, as far as what I've heard from listeners, is we did the Sexy Marriage Radio Getaway this past summer, which was our 5th time. Our 6th one's coming up next year in Indianapolis. Wow. And we had a couple there that he had just performed the weekend before his son's wedding. And in the wedding, in the vows, he slipped in, I promise to love you even when I don't like you, because that's one of my phrases. Because there are times where I'm not going to like my spouse, and that's okay. Love can see us through if I have a commitment, like we talked about earlier, of a commitment to the marriage of my doing, and then a commitment to the person I'm married to. Those both go in simultaneously. But then while we were at the getaway, the new sister, the new daughter-in-law called mother-in-law and just said, there's something wrong. This is painful. Just totally, I was open with her, and they were in tears telling me this. Like, it was so great, because then he got to get on the phone with his son and just say, okay, talk me through it. What are you experiencing? Okay, you can stop. Don't think you have to do this. It's your honeymoon. It's okay. You got the rest of your life. And that's just a normalizing of most people's honeymoon experiences are catastrophic. Actually.
And they're traumatic. They literally started
let's not talk about it all
of trauma sexually, like you're talking about.
Or it couldn't even come close to living up to the expectation they had. And so they come home defeated.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, this is, and then it's a fight. And it shouldn't be that hard. Well, yes, it's going to be that hard. You both don't have a clue what you're doing. She's not used to letting somebody in there regularly. You're not used to somebody having access to you, even though you've maybe wanted it all your life.
Yeah.
In reality, you probably haven't. And it's just, there's deeper stuff being exposed. And the more we can just kind of, hey, let's talk about this. You can level set some of it, but most of it, you got to experience it. And then what do I do to deal with it better?
Gosh, what a dream.
Man.
I pray our kids
reach out.
Yes,
right?
yes.
I do too.
100%.
Man.
Wow.
Yep. I do
Well,
too.
Cory,
'cause
how can our
that
listeners
speaks well.
get more? I want to know how our listeners get more plugged in to everything you're doing. I just think this was an amazing conversation. I want them to, we're obviously going to put stuff in the show notes.
Sure.
For those that are listening only, talk to us. How can they get plugged into all you guys are doing?
So Sexy Marriage Radio is the podcast. You can search anywhere podcasts are found, put that in and you'll find it. smrnation.com is the one-stop shop for everything I do. There's also a community that's built into it. That's its own little network, if you will. It's free to join on some levels. And there's a vibrant, real supportive community that answers these kinds of questions regularly, as well as me, that people speak up about, hey, what do you think about this? This just happened. What about that? Share resources. And so we're just trying to create a place that allows people to really feel heard and supported and give them hope to what's going on in marriage, to see it as, wait, this can be more, this can be better. And how am I getting in my own way? So we do shows every Wednesdays is when they come out. Hump day, come on.
I love it. Cory, thank you for being with us. It has been an incredible interview. I'm just so grateful for the time you spent with Restored to More. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Blessings on you guys in your mission.
Thank you.